I am more impressed by a person that has read, 5 books 100 times than a person that has read 100 books once. And the reason is when you read a book once or twice, you might get a general understanding of the content of that book. But when you read a book 3, 4, 5 times and more, you will develop mastery of that book. And only when you are able to teach the content of a book are you able to apply it. So imagine how many times I've figured out that if you read a book 3 to 5 times, you begin to truly understand the book. You begin to extract the notes and the value that would apply to your life. And then you would develop mastery of that book where you can then teach it to others instead of just telling them, oh, that book, it's about this, right? A general idea of the book. So I'm encouraging you, these 9 books that I'm about to share with you, please actively read them 3 to 5 times, if not more. And that is, by the way, called active reading. Active reading is when you read a book several times, when you extract the value that applies to your life at that point in time, and then you apply the content of that book to your life. That is active reading. Passive reading is, I read Bedros's book and it's about leadership and becoming a high-performing human in your business and your life. Well, what are some of the nuggets I can take away? Oh, like discipline and focus and, well, not really. There's a lot more to it. But if you had read it 3 to 5 times, you would develop a greater understanding of the book, the concepts in the book. You would extract the nuggets, you would apply it to your life, and you would develop mastery of the book. Therefore, you could teach the content of the book. And that is when the book becomes most valuable and effective. But these are the 9 books that have had massive transformations on my life. So here we go. Book number 1 is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. I've said this before, so we don't need to beat this horse to death. Highly recommend you read it. Also highly recommend that you listen to it on audio, because the conversation between Napoleon Hill and the devil is fucking nuts, especially when you hear the deep bellowing voice of the devil or the guy that, plays the devil on the audiobook. It is a crazy ass book that is so relevant today. Here's the crazy thing. The book was written in 1936. Ask me when the book was published. The book was released and published in 2011. Written in 1936, published in 2011, because when the book was written, Napoleon Hill's family, his businesses, his partners were like, dude, this book is so controversial, you cannot put it out until we are all dead. And so he wrote in his will to his estate that once the whole family lineage is dead, to put the book out. And in 2011, the book was released, Outwitting the Devil. It has been massively transformational. This book I've gone through 19 times now. And depending on the phase of life I'm in, I've extracted new nuggets from it, right? You've probably done this before where you've read a book and you're like, wow, that was a great book. You read it like 2 years later, you're in a new phase of life. You're like, holy shit, that book applies, certain parts of it apply more to my life now than ever before. Outwitting the Devil is one of them. Book number 2 is The Way of Men by Jack Donovan. Here you go. You want to learn about the way of men and how we think, how we operate. You want to understand your own mind and heart. The Way of Men by Jack Donovan will take you there. Book number 3, Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. Wild at Heart, again, speaks to the heart and minds of men, especially you men that have not had a father in your life, a father who cares. And if you've had a father in your life, but he's been maybe emotionally absent and not so much physically absent, but emotionally absent, and you're wondering like, why did I not learn certain things? Why do I constantly want to seek approval from other men? Why do I keep putting other men on a pedestal? Why do I have this hero complex about other men? Wild at Heart is going to get you there and explain why and teach you how to heal your heart. And it's going to give you the 3 things that you need to do. There's 3 very specific nuggets in Wild at Heart by John Eldredge that are going to help you transform and heal your heart and become the kind of man that could lead your family, that can lead a business, and that could have a fulfilling life. Book number 4 that I highly recommend is No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover. You hear me talking about like the nice guy syndrome, right? I'm not talking about like someone who's just a pleasant human, not that kind of a nice guy. The kind of nice guy like when a girl says, oh, I'd never date him. He's a nice guy. Nice guy as in like, there's nothing dangerous about you. There's nothing exciting about you. Like someone could see you and they could read you. They know everything about you. I could spot a nice guy. I could smell a nice guy just from a mile away when I spot you, man, because there's no depth about you. You haven't experienced life. You haven't done things. You haven't gotten in a fight. You haven't lost money. You haven't had your heart broken. You haven't lost someone. And so No More Mr. Nice Guy really teaches you how to not be that approval-seeking, validation-seeking nice guy that people just are repelled by, and instead to become a man of greater value, a man who has greater depth, a man who has this passion and drive within him, a man who seeks adventure and who is willing to take on new challenges. Great book by Robert Glover, No More Mr. Nice Guy. Book number 5, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Great book. Jocko and Leif are retired Navy SEALs, and they wrote this book, Extreme Ownership. It's a book on leadership, but it's not just a book on leadership like, hey, for entrepreneurs. It's how to really lead yourself through life. It's how to problem solve, how to figure things out. And I get it, man. There's a new generation now that you haven't been taught and empowered to FIO, to figure things out, to problem solve, to be able to prioritize things and then execute them in the highest of priority first. This book, Extreme Ownership by Jocko and Leif, will get you there. Highly recommend it. Get to it. Book number 6, my book, Man Up. Book is really the 6 pillars of becoming a high-performing human, a high-performing leader, so that you can lead yourself in business and in life. Because I always tell you, financial success does not impress me when a man is living in anxiety, in depression, has a shitty relationship, his kids don't love him and respect him deeply. How's that success? Great, you make money. Who gives a fuck? Right? Those 6 pillars of high performance and Man Up will walk you through the step-by-step process of what being a high-performing human is really all about. Book number 7, Relentless. What an amazing book. If you don't know anything about Tim Grover, like me, he's an immigrant to the United States, comes from India, had a very, very hard upbringing. He worked his way up to being the fitness coach, personal trainer to amazing athletes. This man breaks down the 3 characteristics of the athletes that he's worked with. And he calls them coolers, closers, and cleaners. The Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants, the Dwayne Wades, they are cleaners. And he teaches you, how do you go from being a kind of a mediocre person, a mediocre athlete, if you will, but it's not just for athletes because it's applicable to life. And he really talks about how there's a mindset and there's a process to go from good to great, to becoming that cleaner in your life. Book number 8 by good old David Goggins, another retired SEAL, former SEAL, Cant Hurt Me. And here's a man who just puts it all out there in this book. And I think to read about his journey and then to the action steps that he gives you in his book, Cant Hurt Me, of how he went from this just fat guy that was an exterminator in restaurants. Like, he would go, once a restaurant was closed, he was this fat dude that would, wear the mask and exterminate bugs and shit in a restaurant, and then go get a big fat 2,000 calorie milkshake late at night, and then go home in his apartment and sit there and watch TV. And truly, in every sense of the word, he'll admit it, like, he was a loser. He was a loser. The odds were stacked against him in every way. When you read the book, you'll see that he did not have the most loving of dads. He dealt with a lot of abuse. He dealt with a lot of prejudice. This man was raised in a time and dealt with shit, and truly just puts it all out there that, hey man, I was a fucking loser. He went on to become a Navy SEAL. He went on to just set all types of world records. And Can't Hurt Me is really about all the different fucking things that have happened to you. They can't hurt you. And I think it's a wonderful book of just being able to come out of the ashes like the phoenix rises, right? And finally, book number 9, The Power of Myth. The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to be like, oh shit, it changed everything about how I view religion and my God. Well, it's good to be inquisitive, isn't it? It is good to ask what else is out there. Is there a higher power? What does that higher power look like? What could it be? And Joseph Campbell was a university professor, and he spent his entire life studying all religions, and he found some common threads that are going to blow your mind. The Power of Myth, highly recommended. So guys, those are the 9 books that I recommend that you read, reread, and reread again over the years, and let those lessons from these books apply to your life, execute on them, and you'll see how very quickly you are able to think more clearly for yourself. You're able to become more decisive. You become whole. You overcome your traumas and your life's tragedies, and you no longer become a victim, but you become the victor in your life.